This weekend, UFC 138 in the UK. Main event. I think it's a good fight. I don't know if it has like the sizzle of all the other fights, but guess what? You got 900 fight cards in a row here. Right. Every fight card is not going to be unbelievable. Lieben against Munoz, I got to tell you, Lieben's been good, and he's a dangerous knockout puncher. I don't see how he can beat this Mark Munoz.
Yeah, I like Mark Munoz a lot as a fighter. I think he's developed tremendously. I think he's on the verge of becoming an A fighter. I don't think he's there yet. He might prove it in this fight against Chris Lieben. You know, what do we know about Munoz, Steve? We know he's a hard hitter. His stand-up hasn't always been that great, but if he connects, he's got great power. You know, he's certainly got the great wrestling and the great ground and pound. So if he can tighten up the transitions and tighten up his stand-up, I think he could be a factor at that division, even for Anderson Silva, where we've seen that Anderson has trouble with wrestlers. Do I think he could beat Anderson? I doubt it. But will he even fight Anderson? Because if he beats Chris Lieben and becomes a #1 contender, I don't know if you had a chance to read my column today from my interview with Mark Munoz, but he said that's going to be a very touchy subject, and we're going to need to talk because Anderson and I are training partners and friends.
I'm sure Dana White is thrilled to hear that.
Yeah, I'm sure Dana would not be thrilled to hear that. And I think if he read my column, which, I know he doesn't, so probably Mark is saved, but I think Mark Munoz would hear it from him tomorrow if Dana happened to see that in my column today.
More of the betting breakdown on that card around 6:45. It's the Jewelers of Las Vegas MMA Insider Show. By the way, that card is on very early, live. We're going to get delayed. We get it later on
10:40 Pacific on Facebook.
Yep. And but you are going to get live on Facebook the early part of the card. We're just trying to get any kind of Irish music in? Is that what we do now?
Well, in the merry month
I guess. Kevin Mick.
Don't pot it down. Keep it up.
Kevin Mick IOLE. But you do have Irish in you.
I'm 50% Irish, for God's sake.
You'd never know that. And I'm actually.
How do you think I got the name Kevin?
That's a good point. That's how I got Steve, I guess. I don't know. I'm half Italian. You wouldn't know. How about that?
Paisan.
Right? Yeah, COFIELD. All right, Jewelers of Las Vegas MMA Insider Show brought to you by our buddies at The Jewelers and also our friends at The Gun Store. Make sure you go check out The Gun Store. Great new build-out. I mean, you got to see what's going on out back there. It's crazy. Chris is doing a awesome job, and like I said earlier, they're big supporters of MMA, and Chris goes to the events.
I think Dana White would like to get you at The Gun Store.
I think a lot of people would like to get me at the gun store. Everyday listeners, MMA people, but that's my gift. That's my gift. The gift of irritation.
What would happen if you showed up at the gun store and Bob Arum and Dana White were there? What are the odds of Cofield walking out alive?
Yeah, that would be a long shot. Yeah, that'd be a tough one. We had Bob on today on Gridlock.
I heard.
Yeah, he was very good. He's very good. All right, we got a couple minutes left here. What do we got left? All right, I want to make sure we have enough time to break down UFC 138. So it's a weird deal with the European cards because we're going to get it tape delayed. But we can but in this case we can watch the undercard live on Facebook. Early morning though.
The one thing I'm cringing about is I know I'm going to get all these idiots that are going to be emailing me complaining about spoilers all week when it's like, if you don't want to know, don't go to the internet.
That's the way the internet works now.
Yeah.
Sorry. We got to post the stuff live over at Yahoo. Some of the fights on the undercard. I'll pick out select, and then we'll go to the main card. Omagawa, make or break now. I mean, he's going against Jason Young. He's one of those guys, and I think this happens with the Japanese fighters, and this is why I think they're behind, the American fighters and kind of the Americanized fighters from around the world. He doesn't fight with a game plan. It's just like, I'm just going to go out there and let's box, and maybe I'll go take that. Like, no, game plan.
I just think that the style of fighting that so many of the Japanese fighters have, is just too difficult. I mean, there's not enough of them that are really well rounded. You see guys that are great at jiu-jitsu, or a guy like Yushin Okami is a terrific wrestler. But when's the last time you saw a Japanese fighter you said this guy has everything?
Terry Edom is a gigantic favorite against Edward Loto, however you say his name. It's a tough name to say.
What's the number?
It's minus 700, which makes it unbettable. But what do you think of Edom? Because he hit the wall. It looked like he was going to be a rising star.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I thought Edom looked like a guy. I never looked at him and said he's going to be a Joe Lozon as an example. I never thought he was that good, but I thought he was a guy that was going to be around for a while, made some exciting fights, would be competitive with a lot of top guys and be a guy that you could see for a while. And he's kind of backslid a little bit to me, and I agree with you. I mean, that number, basically they're telling you they don't want you to bet on that fight because at minus 700, there's no way I'm laying that with Terry Edom.
Thiago Alba is really interesting spot. Missed weight again, but it wasn't massive, miss.
And he made weight.
He made it. I know. But he, 172 to 171, not that big a deal. But where his career is right now is a big deal. He's going against a UFC newcomer here after being in the mix for title shot. He got a title shot against GSP.
Right.
I mean, he's getting to that point. Like, either you can do 170 or you're going to have to be a short, stocky 185, or you better start winning fights.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. I saw a story by Eric Fontenez of MMA Weekly that interviewed Thiago Alves, and it was a very interesting story, and it had a telling comment by Alves in there, Steve. He said, I didn't take Rick's story seriously. And I went, what? Are you an idiot? I mean, at that stage of his career, after what he had been through, and he's not taking Rick's story seriously. So to me, Alves is one of those guys you can never count on. He's got so much great talent, but he's just, I think it's like $1 million body and a 10-cent head. You just can't count on him being all there at any given time.
Minus 345 in that fight. And
no way would I lay that.
Yeah, too unreliable. Last two fights. I think one of the best fights on the card, Brad Pickett, Brit, has been totally Americanized. He's ATT guy, American top team in South Florida, going against a Brazilian who he's 3-0 in the Zuffa brand, Renan Barro, and Pickett's actually the underdog, plus 125.
Yeah, I think Barra's a pretty good fighter. He too is a guy, kind of like the Japanese guys coming in that's had some ups and downs as he's adjusted, but I think he is a pretty good fighter. But I do like, in this case, I'm going to go with the underdog here. I think Pickett, if he's going to be fighting in front of the home crowd, I think he's going to have a lot of motivation. It is his UFC debut. I'm going to go ahead and take Brad Pickett, just the plus money there. Just, it's a tough fight to pick.
I always love the UFC debut, though, with the guys who've been fighting under Zuffa banner. Real quick, on the main event, you got Lieben, you got Munoz going up against each other, and Munoz, massive favorite. That's where the problem is betting this one. Minus 280, Lieben plus 240.
Yeah, this isn't a good betting fight. I mean, if you're going to bet, you bet Chris Lieben. I mean, a guy that punches like he does, that big left hand that he has, plus 240, that's a pretty good number. But I look at Mark Munoz as a guy that is a star on the rise, and in the post-Anderson Silva era, is going to be in the running for the title. I like Munoz to win the fight. If I were going to bet, I would bet Chris Lieben, but more than likely I'd stay away from it because Lieben also is kind of an unreliable guy.
I agree. Unbettable, but Munoz is the side to play. Thanks to the gun store. Check them out, 2900 East Tropicana. Also, the Jewelers of Las Vegas. Thanks to Joe Lozon. Thanks to Clay Guida over at the UFC and Evans for hooking us up. We'll see you next week on the Jewelers of Las Vegas MMA Insider Show from Anaheim before UFC on Fox.